The Markan story continues, and today we look at chapter 7, verses 14 to 23 and proper 17 in Series B of Mark's Gospel. This text follows very closely upon last week's text, especially with the language of defilement, being unclean, and a little more specificity by Jesus concerning what it is he's talking about when he was talking in the previous passage about what is pure, what is clean, what is important. Now, compared to last week, there is a lot less to talk about in this passage, but I do think it divides very cleanly here between verses 14 and 17, where there is a kind of a general statement here by Jesus that kind of lays out everything. And it's really interesting here how it happens, because you have this language of listen, and this makes Jesus clearly speaking of them as catechumens, hearers of the word. So he's asking them to be hearers of the word. And not just listen, but they are to listen and they are to understand. Now remember, this word has been used, understand, that they do not understand the bread, which means they don't understand Christ. And they don't understand the walking on water, which is they don't understand until the resurrection. They are really sort of clueless, and they see this in a sense as a parable. And so when they ask him, the disciples, about this parable, then Jesus, in a sense, explains it here. So they perceive this statement here about what, outside of a person going into him is not what defiles him. It's the things that come out of a person that defile him. And you do have this remarkable language here that I think we should highlight, the outside and the going in, and then you have the going out. You're going to see it repeated down below here. One of the other things to observe here, and I don't want to make too big a deal out of this, but I think it is somewhat significant. We have the crowds being referred to here. Now, the crowds are always a reference to the remnant, to the faithful remnant. They're ones who come believing in Jesus. They're the ones who bring the sick people, to him to be healed by him. And this is spoken to them. They are the catechumens. They are the ones who are, trying to understand, and in many ways do, and Jesus calling them together. That's a word that's used by Paul for calling together the church. So Jesus is, in a sense, kind of summoning people to hear his teaching, to form them into the church. But then, and this is sort of a transitional verse between, the two sections, when he goes into the house, apart from the crowd, now the disciples are asking about this parable. So this is what I like to call, this is inside baseball. This is where Jesus is now, for his select 12, he is going to lay down the meaning of what it means of this outside coming in and what comes out of a man, and the nature of what it means to have this defiling here, this notion of defiling. What defiles a man? Okay, so here's his explanation. He says to them, and it is very important to see how he starts this. He says to them, are you also those who are not understanding? Okay, here the understanding, but not understanding. Remember, they do not understand the bread. And then he says this, do you not see? Do you not see? So it's understanding and seeing Do you not understand that here's the outside again and going into a man? This is not what defiles. There's the defiling language again. It's not what's outside and comes in. And that's very, very important. Why? And you know, I should have put this all on one line, but look at this. Into the heart, but into the stomach, and then it's cast out into the, you know, expelled somewhere, you know. Veld says into the privy, you know. But the heart, the stomach, you know, this coming from the outside. Of course, we're talking here now about the food laws and how some of the food laws are related to the purity laws, and that there is some food that is clearly unclean. Now, I love this little statement by the evangelist Mark, and you know, because he is Peter's guy, you know, here Jesus is clearing all bromata, food, and of course one of the food is the arton, the bread. The bread, okay, clean. All food is clean. And you can't help but think that this takes us, let me get a darker color, this takes us here to Acts 10 and 11 and Cornelius and the vision where Jesus, you know, I mean, where it is revealed to Peter that all foods are clean. And then Jesus does, you know, here he speaks to them, historic present, and now imperfect. He says to them over and over again, and this is so important to see where he is clearly describing that it's what comes out of a man that defiles him. Okay, it's what comes out. Not what goes in, but what comes out. And then he very clearly says here, for from within, okay, within, as contrasted here to without, for within, out of the heart of a man, and then you've got the catalog here of vices. Now, if you look at Galatians 5, you have another list of vices. And I'm going to be speaking here of what I know about the vices in Galatians 5, and I think Paul got it, not just from Jesus, but there were these lists of vices that both the Jews used and the Gentiles, the pagans. And I mean, these are horrific, as you know. It says, out of the heart of man come evil thoughts, dialoguings that are kakoi, evil. The dialoguings come out. And what are they? I mean, here is those things that absolutely destroy community. Sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. I mean, there's really no order to them because they're chaotic. They break community. They destroy community. And basically, he's saying the Pharisees are, you know, in a sense, involved in this because they're splitting hairs about what goes in, what comes out. You know, I mean, they're misinterpreting it all. Now, just look at how beautiful this is. Mark is really, like all the evangelists, he really knows what he's doing in terms of structure. Look at how you've got man, defile. So that frames there. And then you also have out of a man, and here out of you know, outside. Here you've got estos and, you know. So you've got this frame of the vices. And all I can say is at this point, as his disciples heard this, now the Pharisees are not privy to this. This is the disciples. But the disciples know that what Jesus is doing here is he is directly addressing the Pharisees. Now, how do you preach on this? I mean, where's the gospel? I mean, you look at this and you go, where's the gospel? Well, I think what you have to do is you have to spin off from last week. And I think the thing about last week is that you really do have, a little bit more glimpse of the gospel. But I think you have to take the idea of what, defiles a person. And this is language that you see all the way through here, defile. Look at how many times it's used. And I may be missing them here. I've got 6 right there, and there may be more. Okay, what you want to do is you want to talk about, okay, what makes somebody clean? And here's the language of clean. I put this in blue. Blue is my gospel color. All foods are clean. All things are clean in Christ. And I think here you have to step back a little bit and say that what comes out of a man who is in Christ are Christological things. Not the vices, obviously, but if you are in Christ, what's going to come out from you, and I would go to this. I would go to Galatians 5, and I would say what comes out of a person are the fruits of the Spirit. And these are, of course, Christological fruits. These are fruits that are all Christ's attributes. These are things that we get all at baptism. These are the things that make us clean. And to connect this to last week, and I would definitely run with this. And the first fruit of the Spirit, of course, is love. And this is how Jesus shows us in his own life, in his own death, in his being who he is on the cross, as the one who loves his neighbor as himself, even unto death of the cross, that what is holy, what is clean, is what is connected to Christ's sacrificial love. And that really what you have here, in many ways, all of us being sort of catechumens, all of us seeking understanding, is what we did last week, a radical Christological hermeneutic on what is clean, what is holy, what is pure. And one cannot help but recognize that if that is true, the only thing that matters is that we are in the presence of the Holy One. And I didn't mention this last week, but certainly, it should have been something I mentioned, and I'll certainly say it here. You can't help but think of what this means for the presence of Christ in worship, in liturgy, in word and sacrament, where Christ is making us clean. Christ is showing us by entering us through word and sacrament, so that these fruits of the Spirit can come out of us. These, attributes of Christ because of the Christ in us. You can't help but think that's the center of cleanness, and all foods are clean. Let's flee to Jesus, the bread. Jesus, the one whose food is given us in, with, and under bread and wine, his very body and his very blood. Well, this is a hard text. It's hard to find the gospel here. But the Lord be with you as you have this opportunity to help people see that Christ is the Holy One of God.